Tonight, if we had to title our story of the Bible, we would call it Abraham's Life is Changing. The Bible tells us in Genesis, the 23rd chapter, in verse 1, that Sarah was 127 years old, 127 years old, and she died. Sarah was indeed a great example for the woman today that would want to pattern her life after someone. Sarah could be that example. Ladies' Day yesterday, they have their themes. This could be a good theme for a Ladies' Day. Pattern your life after Sarah. Because you think about all the things that she did in her life, in her faith in God, and her respect for her husband. She left her home. She went into a strange country. She sojourned there, not having a permanent home after that, and lived and followed Abraham everywhere he went, on the hope and promise that God had given to Abraham that he would give Abraham and Sarah a son, and through this son, multitudes of people would come, and the entire world would be blessed. And for 25 years, Sarah and Abraham together wandered in the land of Canaan, not seeing the fulfillment of that promise until at the end of the 25th year. And God fulfilled that seed promise and gave Abraham and Sarah a son, and they named him Isaac. And Sarah was blessed in her old age in giving birth to this child, not only the happiness that she had because she was able to have a child, but also the happiness that she had because she was able to give Abraham a son. And the Bible says she expressed that she was overjoyed. But Sarah lived 27 years after she gave birth to Isaac. 27 years. She's able to enjoy her son. And then she left this world. Abraham loved his wife. It's demonstrated through many of the passages. He cared for her. He loved her. And he tried to protect her in every way that he could. He tried to live his life in such a way, but he showed his love for Sarah in her death, in that he wanted to purchase a burial place for her in this land that he sojourned in. He did not own any land. He was just merely wandering through the land. And Abraham requested of the people that they would sell him a parcel of land so that he could bury Sarah. And they basically said to Abraham, to show the character that he was and what relationship he had with the people in the land of Canaan, they said to Abraham, pick out what you would like to have. And he said, I would like to have the cave of Machpelah, which is in the land of Hebron, that belongs to Ephraim the Hittite. And Ephraim said, it's yours, take it and bury your family, it's yours. And Abraham said, no, but I'll pay you the price of the land. And Ephraim said, well, it's only worth 400 shekels of silver. And what is that between us? And Abraham said, if that's what it's worth, then that's what I'll pay you. And he paid the money for the cave of Machpelah, and there he buried his wife Sarah. I'm sure that in the loss of his wife, that Abraham grieved as anyone would grieve. But also the Bible mentions the fact that Isaac, the son, the 27-year-old son, was mourning the death of his mother. And Abraham probably saw that in his son. And he probably knew that Isaac needed something in his life to help to fill that empty spot that he had. And so Abraham said to his servant, I want you to go back to the land of Haran, back to that land of Mesopotamia, to my family. And he tells his servant, I want you to go there, and I want you to select a wife for Isaac. And I'm sure in his mind he was doing this, because he wanted to fill that spot that had been left there in Isaac's life. And Abraham said to his servant, which was really the leader of all of his other servants. He was the oldest servant in his household. He was the one that ruled over all that Abraham had. And he said, I want you to put your hand under my thigh, and I want you to swear that you will go and you will take a wife from my brethren to Isaac, because I don't want him to have a wife from among these Canaanites that we dwell. I want him to have a wife for my family. And the servant made an oath with Abraham that he would go and he would find a wife for Isaac, and he would, bring her back. But he said to Abraham, suppose that I go to your brethren and there are not any women that's willing to come back here. What do I do? And Abraham said, if that's the case, if you go and there's not anyone that's willing to come back to be a wife for Isaac of my family, of my brethren, and he said, you're free from the oath and you're free to go. And he said, but the thing about it is, he said, I don't want Isaac to be back here. I want Isaac to be with my family. I don't want him to dwell in the land of Canaan. So Abraham prepared his servant. He sent him to his family, which was in Haran, and the servant comes to Haran. He came there to the well where all the women would come out and they would draw water. And the servant said to God, you're going to have to help me in this. I need to make this selection. And so God basically said that when the women would come out to draw water, the one that would come out and that would offer to draw water and to feed the animals that were with the servant and to give water to the servant, that this is the young lady that has been chosen. Well, when the ladies of Haran came out to draw water, the Bible tells us there in Genesis chapter 24 that Rebekah came out and she offered just that. She offered to draw water for the servant, to give him drink and to give water to the animals that was with him. And the servant, realizing that God had made his selection, that it was indeed Rebekah, and he took jewelry that he had brought with him. He placed it on Rebekah, and he asked her questions, about her family. And she invited him to go and to spend time at her father's house, the house of Bethuel, to go. And Bethuel was indeed the grandfather. He was the brother to the grandfather of Abraham. He was the brother to Nahor. And so this was indeed the descendant there of Abraham through the family of Bethuel and Laban. And Rebekah here came, and she took the servant, and as she came to her father's house, she ran ahead and she told all of them in the house what the servant had said to her, and how, the selection, that he had given her jewelry and had said that he was, from the house of kinfolks, and he was come there. And so they invited him in, and they prepared a meal for him, and he came in and he sat down at the table, and he said, before I eat, I've got to take care of business first. And he wanted them to know why I'm here. And he told them what Abraham had told him, that he was there in that country so that he could find a wife for Abraham's son Isaac. And he told him the story that he had asked God to give him a sign so that he would know which one would be God's selection for Isaac. And he told the story about Rebekah coming out, and she fit everything that was told him, that she would come out and she would offer to give water to him and to give water to his animals, and that how he had given her the jewelry and how she had said that she was from the household of Bethuel, and he knew that was kinfolk of Abraham. And he said to Abraham's family, now God has sent me here to find a wife for his son. And if you will, then basically fulfill my mission. If Rebekah has been selected by God, and if you will, then fulfill my mission. And when he had done speaking, after he had finished explaining to them why he was there, it tells us that they made the decision that if it's God's choice, and I like this part of this story in the Bible, because here was people that before time, you may remember when Abraham left Haran and the Ur of Chaldees to go up to Haran, that his family were idolaters. And God said to Abram, "Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land that I will show thee." Without a doubt, these people had received word about Abraham and his life and how Abraham was prospering and how his life was good. It's possible even from the context that they had received word about the promises that were made to Abraham and that, and how Abraham's life was going, because they said to Rebekah, once Laban and Bethuel had made their decision, they said to Rebekah, "You're going to be a mother of multitudes." Now that's what they said. Now you remember God said to Abraham, "I'm going to multiply your children like the stars in the heaven and like the sand on the seashore." And so I've got an idea from what these men said that they had heard about that. And they said to Rebekah, "You're going to be a mother of multitudes." And indeed she would. And Rebekah agreed to go with the servant, to go back to the land of Canaan with him, and to become Isaac's wife. They wanted her to tarry for a while, but the servant said to her, "This is the will of God. This is what I've got to do." And so they asked Rebekah, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to go. I want to go." And she went with him. And the Bible tells us that this agreement was made, between Laban and Bethuel and the servant. And the servants convinced them that this was the will of God. And these people that the Bible had described, as I mentioned, that they formerly were idolaters, and Abraham was told to get away from his family and from his kindred, these people are showing a good moral side to them, because they said, if it be God's will, we cannot go against it. So they did recognize a certain part of God, and they said that we will not go against the will of God. So they make this agreement, and they send them on their way back to the land of Canaan. Now the Bible tells us that Abraham's servant and Rebekah, they leave the land of Haran to follow the Fertile Crescent, as it's called, leaving the land of Mesopotamia, going back into the land of Canaan. In Genesis chapter 24, it says, Isaac came from the way of the well of Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the south country. Isaac went out to meditate in the field at evening time. He lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and behold, the camels were coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she had said unto the servant, What man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant said, It is my master. Therefore she took a veil, she covered herself, and the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, took Rebekah, and she became his wife. He loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So that's the reason that I said earlier that Isaac had a big void in his life after the death of Sarah. For 27 years, Sarah got to enjoy her son, and Isaac got to enjoy his mother. But yet that left a tremendous void. But Sarah was one of the characters of the Bible. As we think about God in going about trying to fulfill His promise, many times God will have to work out His promise through sinful man. There will be characters in the Bible that God will use which really are in contrast to what we would think would be the nature of someone that would serve God. But God will still use them in order to carry out the plan. But this is not the case in the case of Sarah and Abraham. These were two individuals that God left His promises with, that they lived their life in striving to please God in everything that they could. And Sarah did that in her life. She did that based upon promises that, like I said, for 25 years she was promised a son, and after 25 years she finally got one. And then she got to keep him for 27 years. And then she had to leave, and she had to go from this world into the world after as a righteous soul. And as the book of Hebrews, the 11th chapter points out, she had tremendous faith in that she followed. What great example. You know, the book of Romans says those things that are written aforetime were written for our learning. And I say that of all the characters in the Bible, there's none greater than Sarah. There's no faith greater than that of Sarah. And oftentimes we speak of Abraham, and indeed Abraham did have a great faith. But by his side, through everything that he did, there was Sarah. She was right there. When he had to leave his home, she left with him. When he wandered in the land, she was there with him. She stood with him in looking forward to that promise. And what greater picture can be painted today than a Christian man and a Christian woman walking side by side through life, looking for the hope of heaven together. And you know, that's the way God wanted it to be. And there's no greater plan that can be had. That is joined together, as the Bible said, what God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. And he said, these two shall be one flesh. Sarah and Abraham were that. So Abraham's life changed. His life changed. He went from being a man with a wife to being a man without a wife. And his life did not end. It just simply changed. If you're here tonight and need to respond to the invitation, why don't you do so while we stand and while we sing?